find generational studies fascinating, and so it is endlessly interesting to live in a household that includes 3 generations. For Brett and I, who are Gen X, even though he grew up in Nanaimo, British Columbia, and I grew up in West Michigan, we remember all the same trends. There was no internet, but somehow what was cool and what was uncool spanned the country anyway. It was imperative when we were students that one was never, ever to wear a backpack on both shoulders. Doing so was an unmistakable signal to the whole world that one was a nerd, a geek, totally uncool forever. I remember walking around so cool with chronic back pain. I can just feel the weight of that strap. The backpack loaded with textbooks because there was no iPad, all through middle and high school. Even when I sprained my ankle in 10th grade, that second backpack strap would just dangle my heavy bag, pulling me off kilter with my crutches. It sure would have been a relief to redistribute that weight. I no longer consider it uncool to wear both straps in a backpack, but I do get a sore shoulder when I carry a bag on one arm. Even if it's just a little bit of weight, it's enough to throw me off kilter and get a pain in my back. Redistribution is the key. When we are carrying something heavy, we need a counterweight. Who among us isn't carrying something heavy these days? The emotional and energetic weight of our time is crushing. It throws us off kilter. Personal and communal grief makes hope hard to come by. How do we process? How do we cope? How do we heal? We need a counterweight. Our bodies tell us when we are not balanced, when things are out of whack. Sometimes getting rid of the thing we're carrying is not an option, but we can redistribute the weight. We can add something meaningful that helps make our burden easier to bear. Well, that's what happens in kinship. In this kingdom of God of which we are a part, bound together with others walking this path of faith, of love, of compassion. Being in relationship with other people adds complexity, even complication. But the adding of time and energy for relationships adds a richness to our days that lightens the load. Jesus said, "Don't let your hearts be troubled." Well, our hearts are troubled.
Oh, yeah.
But we can counter the weight of that trouble. We cannot protect our hearts because love hurts. But we can love more. We can love God more. Jesus said, "I am the way." Relationship with God counters the weight of our burdens. It also helps us enter our burden more deeply. Because spiritual practice puts us in touch with the quiet, with the dark. And there is realness there without distraction, avoidance, numbing. We can begin the day not by scrolling socials, but by stepping out and breathing in air. Or pray as we let steamy coffee or tea fog our glasses, as we make breakfast and sit down to eat it, not in front of the TV, but in the presence of the holy. The news is heavy. but we can pick up a counterweight in the other hand. We can put on the other strap of the backpack. We can do it by so many ways. A prayer practice, moving our bodies, walking, by making soup, by baking bread, by calling a friend. Church is a counterweight. A thing you have all chosen to take time for this day to take up. And it takes time. It takes emotional energy. It takes a willingness to be seen, a willingness to see, and maybe be nudged open. When life is heavy, and it is heavy, our tendency might be to keep going without shifting weight. Our back is aching, but we don't stop to put on the other strap. Pause. Stop. What can we take up? What meaningful thing can we do? Who do we want to be? This text we heard this morning is a common funeral text. The Father, Mother has prepared a place for us. And I believe that mysteriously, mystically, we will somehow be brought to the heart of God after we die. But a place up above the clouds with harps and streets of gold, I don't think that's it. The place God has prepared for us is in our hearts, and it's between us in relationship, and in the hush, and in the chirping birds and the rustle of leaves. It's in the dirty dishes and the laundry pile. It's in the mundane. The place God has prepared for us is here. It is now. In 2019, Alki UCC went through a time of revisioning and came up with the future story. You hired me in 2022 to accompany you in that future story of becoming a multi-faith community center. But here's the thing. You've actually been a multi-faith community center the whole time I've been here. Partnering with Polkaneshima and the Dharma group, being a gathering ground for feeding people, for clothing our community, enfolding and equipping music lovers, and being a place of learning, seeking, and deep meaning. The future story is not out ahead of us. The place God has prepared for us is here. It's now. It is what we are currently living. The upcoming Earth Mother concert is a lived reality of that now. With the Alki UCC Community Choir, a tapestry of folks who all have different reasons for showing up, but for whom participation is a necessary counterweight. Yes. We desire to flesh out more fully being a center for music. We now have a 501c3, which is ripe for possibility of a music and arts school. It is not a future story. It is now. It's a renewed commitment to partnerships, to relationship, to getting to know our neighbors, to be the church in the world. We have created a community of belonging at Alki UCC. Yes. It is a peace for troubled hearts. It is a counterweight to the ugh of the news. The retreat I attended last week for continuing education was very much a counterweight. It was heavy. It was full. I I attended 15 worship services over the course of 5 days. I attended 10 lectures. I observed much silence. The theme was the gifts of darkness, taught by a rabbi from Massachusetts and a UCC pastor from Nebraska. We engaged scriptures about biblical figures who were thrust into times of despair, such as Jonah, Job, Elijah, and Koheleth, who penned the book of Ecclesiastes. Lamentation is a practice of hope, because when we lament, we are testifying to the fact that things are not as they should be. And we must not ascend too quickly from a tight place, because there is something to learn there in that obscurity. And there are provisions in that desert. At the end of the 5 days, my teacher said, take at least a week to process what you have learned here. 2 weeks is better. I think I'll need a lifetime. And in the middle of it all, I learned a new term, spiritual bypassing. Anybody heard of this? A couple. It's when we misuse our spirituality or faith in God to sidestep painful emotions, to bypass them. By saying things like, everything happens for a reason, or it's God's plan, pushing pain away instead of muddling through. We need to muddle through, painful as it may be. And we need to companion others in their muddling through. Not saying, are you better? There's a story about someone that fell in a ditch, and a doctor heard them crying out for help. She stopped and wrote them a prescription, which she dropped into the ditch, letting it float down unhelpfully to the man. Then a religious leader came by, hearing him cry, and he wrote out a prayer and tossed it down. Then a friend came by and dropped right in there with him. And the man said, why did you do that? Now we're both stuck in here. Friend said, I've been here before, and I can show you the way out.
That's recovery.
That's recovery.
Yeah.
All right.
Beautiful.
Do not let your hearts be troubled. We need peace. I believe that what Jesus means here is, do not let your hearts stay troubled. Because his heart was troubled. He was troubled when he saw how the marginalized were being treated. He was troubled when religious leaders were exploiting the poor. He was troubled by legalism and classism and hypocrisy. Our hearts are troubled because we love. Our hearts are troubled because we don't wish to bypass painful emotions. But if we stay too long in a troubled space, we can become numb. We can become overwhelmed. Our grief can hold us back from doing the good that is ours to do. In her book, Counterweights, an essential practice of holding hope in a heavy world, Shannon Martin points out that carrying something heavy becomes more efficient, more doable, if we carry something equally heavy in the other hand. And if our grand plan is to find a way to keep going, the answer is to double up on the weight, redistribute it, get back to work. If we are feeling the too muchness of the world, our tendency might be to numb out. Instead, add something meaningful. Pick up a spiritual practice, notice or create beauty, nurture a relationship. Shannon Martin writes, when wholeness is our goal, beauty is our emergency. Begin to think about the beauty that you can add to your days, or the beauty that is already there, ready for the noticing, the appreciation of the spark of divine in everything. Yesterday, I walked the labyrinth at Our Lady of Guadalupe, and I did an experiment where I picked out a rock nearby that was about the same weight as my cell phone, and I placed it in the center of the labyrinth, the place to receive. And I had my cell phone in my pocket, and I wound my way into the labyrinth, feeling that unbalanced feeling of just that small weight, and considered all the ways I'm off balance, off kilter. I didn't like having that weight on one side. I thought about the weight I carry from the world, from bad habits like being tethered to my phone, distracted by it, lured by the socials and consumerisms, those systems that successfully addict me. And when I reached the center, I picked up that rock and put it in my other pocket. And then on my return journey out through the labyrinth, I felt balance. Those things I add to my days that make the burden of life easier to bear, I considered those things. I imagined those as that rock. Nurturing relationships, cooking a meal for my family, which I hadn't done in so long. I did last Thursday, and I was so surprised by how unusual it felt because it had been that long. Reading a good book, spending time in prayer, walking a labyrinth. I was carrying more weight in my pockets overall, but I wasn't thinking about the weight anymore because it was easier to bear. Our bodies may be telling us or screaming at us to seek some balance. So let's be uncool together. Let's use both straps of our backpacks, redistribute the weight of the world that we carry. Counterweights are everywhere.